Good evening. We have just returned from Monsters University.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and what did you think of Monsters University?
I have very, very mixed feelings. I enjoyed it. I think it's somewhat better than Monsters Incorporated, but on the other hand, it was not really needed, and there are parts that just make me go, So, like I said, I'm really mixed on this one.
Yes, you would be that way, wouldn't you? I, on the other hand, I loved Monsters University so much, I even enrolled. And I became a scarer. Do forgive the complexion. I, unfortunately, am coming over a bit of an illness. But seriously, I loved Monsters University. Granted, there are some questionable things about it, as you mentioned. The setup's a bit weak, even though pretty much it's just, showing off the university and everything, which is cool. But it was a lot better than I thought it would be. Like, this actually is better than the first Monsters, Inc., because you take two characters that, even though we're likable, it gives them, it actually gives them arcs. It gives them character arcs. It makes them much more sympathetic. Because, I like Sully. He's a nice, likable guy. But in this version, he's actually an entitled douchebag. And, of course you know how that whole thing goes with, the self-entitled douchebag lives on his family legacy. Has to learn to humble himself and to actually learn the real schematics of doing what his family legacy had been doing. And then you have Mike, who's the clear underdog of the story. He wants to do this. He wants to do this thing. He wants to be a scarer so bad, and he studies everything, and he knows every single technical aspect, but he's not scary. So I actually like that. I like that they actually added more depth to these characters, and they added a lot more, because I was worried going in, because this is Pixar's very first prequel. So, and we saw what they did with their first sequel, Cars 2, and granted, it's a fun, mindless action movie, but it's nowhere near up to the par that Pixar usually, sets themselves. And with the prequel, I was equally worried this would be sort of the same thing. But like I said, I was surprised, because they actually try to make the characters, even though they're monsters, human. They make them sympathetic, and heck, I sympathized with Mike, most of all, and it was very surprising, because, he's a short, small little guy who everyone underestimates, and he tries his hardest to do something he just absolutely wants to do, but even though it's quite obvious he's not up to the physical standard of being able to do it. I sympathize with that greatly. So this movie actually struck an emotional chord with me. It really did. So, and I would definitely see it again. And once again, you could tell this is a Pixar film, because there are many times throughout the film where you think it's going to go into the cliche, ending, or the cliche, story turn or something, or the character's going to do something that's cliche of their character, but they don't. And a lot of times when it seems like there's going to be a solution to the problem, there's an even bigger problem and a bigger obstacle. And I actually love that, because that's what Pixar does. They create bigger, more epic obstacles with even bigger, more epic solutions. That is how you can tell this is a Pixar film. But, what else is it that we disagree upon, Sir Douglas?
I guess mostly it's certain aspects of the college experience that we probably disagree upon. But then again, I think we had different college experiences, so it's all a lot of this is semantics. Like I said, the first half is probably the worst, and probably like the whole time I'm thinking this would have worked better as shorts versus making it into a whole movie, because it just seems like the first act is the first half up until they get to the scare games. Well, even further past the scare games too, because even then I was sort of not completely enthused. It's when it gets later on that I actually started enjoying it. But for the first half, before they really get into the scare games, it's a lot of humor and not much substance. There's like a couple of things that are interesting, but generally, like I said, it's more aiming for the joke versus, making anything that would really progress the movie very much, or making anything interesting with the characters. So, I mean, I know it's supposed to be build up, but to me it just wasn't handled very well. I don't know. Like I said, though, the second half, like, I thought the scare games were very, very interesting, very fun at times. In fact, when they do the very first scare game, I really enjoyed the music that was going on through it. I thought that was it suited the scene very well. Mm-hmm. I do question, though, based on some of the reality that they've set up in the first movie, I kind of wonder how certain things happen. Like, I'm not really spoiling it so much, but there are like these, I guess you'd call them like koosh balls, and if any of the monsters touch them, they swell up. They didn't really explain what they were, why they would do that. And I mean, we've already kind of established that the whole thing with humans or anything that they touch are not actually, they're not actually poisonous to monsters. So it kind of leads me to wonder what exactly they did to these items.
They probably just added some skin irritants to them, something they knew that would cause a sort of allergic-like reaction, but at the same time is not lethal. Even though, in my opinion, that's kind of irresponsible, given that you could theoretically get someone who is allergic to that type of material and have them die on the course. Which,
yeah.
I mean, I know, like, this is, like, a hardcore thing, and, and obviously, like, people are gonna get hurt, but at the same time, like, don't put your students' like lives in danger.
I won't really spoil anything here, but I'm just gonna say the ending sort of confuses me. I mean, the ending makes sense, but having had what they went through, it kind of makes me wonder why they did this in favor of that, or why we had to go through a certain amount of things. I mean, I can't really explain everything I thought was wrong with the movie, but like I said, I did enjoy it, and it is better than Monsters Incorporated. That said, much like I feel about Monsters Incorporated itself, I just sort of feel eh. With this, I feel slightly less eh, and, actually thought it was a slightly better movie, but based on what it's based on, I didn't really feel all that much for it. Like, it goes with I've said it before that Pixar has never made a bad film, even in like its quote unquote worst. It's disappointing at best, or sort of mindless, but even then you're still enjoying it. Mm-hmm. But it's with Monsters Incorporated, it's hard to get off the idea that it's already been done in a Nickelodeon television show. And in fact, when you think about it, having them in a university makes it even more like Our Real Monsters. So it's like, this concept isn't new.
It isn't.
No. And you did something interesting with it, I'll grant you that. I'll grant you that you took certain liberties with it and made something creative, made something unique. But actually it's not unique because it's already been done. So it's slightly different. It's its own universe, but it's much like what's already been done with Our Real Monsters. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
True, but I mean, in a college movie, you have to expect to see college movie cliches. That is an unavoidable thing.
Well, I was expecting that.
Right. But, but, like, they do have some cliche things. Like, you have, like, the big jock on campus who, you know, is head of his fraternity, who has, like, a ritzy name so you know that he's, like, an aristocrat. And, of course, he's the douchey, one of the douchey antagonists of the movie. You know, he's stereotypical. And you also have the stereotypical fraternity with all the girls who all look the same and act in, like, a giggly girl manner. You have, like... What is it? You have the whole goth clique. You have like all those party boys who are like, yeah, and throwing themselves in the crowds and stuff. It's all stereotypical stuff all around. It's unavoidable. Like, however, like in the case of this movie, they do deviate from the norm a bit. So, and one prime example is one of their new characters, who is one of the antagonists. I hesitate to call her the antagonist, because she is and she isn't at the same time. I'm basically talking about is the dean of the school. Now, in any typical college movie, the dean is always the bad guy, and there's like no ambiguity about it. The dean is always like stuffy, hates kids even though he works at a school, always trying to further himself, and whenever they get a beef with a certain student or a group of students, they will go all out in order to take that group down, just to fulfill a personal vendetta. In the case of this dean, she not only has a reputation about her for having been one of the scariest scares ever, you know, having a canister of like the Scream to help her break the Scream record, but she is personally in charge of passing every single scare student that goes through her floor, because she only accepts the best. And I kind of compare her to Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter, in that she is super strict and really like kind of stingy with the rules. Like, she will not let any bullshit pass. But at the same time, she's actually fair about it. And when I first saw her, I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to be the stereotypical dean, she's going to have a problem with Mike and Sully, and they're going to have to, like, fight her in order to stay in school or something, and while it does kind of go that route, at the same time, you can sort of see from her point of view on why she would have beef with these guys. It's understandable. And in a way, she becomes actually a really respectable character. And I gotta say, I love her design, because she's, like, genuinely scary. Like, think of, like, all the creepy, crawly, lizard-like creatures that you've ever been afraid of, and mesh them into one, and, like I said, throw Professor McGonagall in the bunch. That is her. Like, and I actually really like her, and I like what they did with her in this. And honestly, she's, like, she's really the only new character that I actually liked in all this. Like, the other characters were kind of forgettable. Like, they obviously had some throwback characters for the original movie. Like, they show Randall in there, who starts the whole thing off as
Mike's roommate.
Mike's nice roommate. Like, they actually start off as friends, and it's Sully the one that he's at war with, as a nice juxtapose, but he doesn't really have any purpose being there other than, hey, it's Randall from the first one. You want to see how he became a douche? Well, this is how, even though we don't really show how. And he has no real bearing on the plot. So, and other than that, it's all like a bunch of, you just see like the fraternity that they join and what losers they all are. And they're designed to look like losers at that. They're all like big and pudgy and non-threatening and everything. And honestly, like, I can't really tell them apart. Like, maybe that hairy purple dude, just because he's so weird.
He was probably the funniest character.
He was.
He had some of the greatest lines.
He does. Like, he sees those poisonous things we were talking about, and he's like, I want to touch them. I'm gonna touch them. And then my favorite line was when is later on when they're sneaking somewhere they're not supposed to be, and the cops catch him, and he's like, I don't want to go back to jail. Like, he is funny, but other than that, the rest of them, like, I don't really remember them that well. They could be just any of the the dozens upon dozens of background monsters we see. So, pretty much it. But then again, like, they're not supposed to be the focus. It's Mike and Sully's story. It's supposed to be how they met, how they got to where they are now and all that. I mean, when you think about it, like, given what we know about Monsters, Inc. and the direction that scaring heads towards, like, basically non-existence, it does, in retrospect, make the movie seem kind of superfluous. Like,
it didn't need to be made.
Yeah, like completely pointless, like, not even referencing upon. Like, you wonder, like, well, what does it matter if they need to learn to scare, if they need to learn semantics of, like, and they need to learn techniques of scaring and everything. Like, it's all gonna go out the window anyway in Monsters, Inc. Because, they all switched over to laughter. So, what are you gonna do? But, like, again, this is more, like, you gotta kind of, like, forget about that and just remember this is Mike and Sully's story. This is their adventure from point A to point B. And, in a way, it's a satisfying, like, story on how they get to where they are. Because, like, it does seem, like, it pretty much is cliche. The whole starting off as enemies, becoming friends thing. But it's... You
sort of see how they're the polar opposites, and that in order to work together, they're like, they need to fit their puzzle piece together.
Right. Like, because at first you do think, like, wait, these guys are actually pretty freaking different. In fact, they're even different from how they are in the original movie. How exactly did this come about? But then you see the process of how eventually they do have things in common, they do have a reason to work together, and they do have a reason why they must be together. So really, it's more about that. It's more of a buddy comedy. So that's really what it is. And in my opinion, they actually did that pretty well. Like, it kind of does drag to start with in order to getting them together, to be on the same page of where they have to be with each other. But once they are together, though, like, it does pick up a lot, and their scenes together are pretty good, especially in the climax and the ending. So, yes. So, final thoughts. I definitely like this movie. I definitely recommend it, whether you're a kid or a grown-up. If you saw the original, I do say you should see the original before seeing this, because again, like, this is a prequel, and which technically you shouldn't have to need to, like, see the original since it's a lead up to it, but it's easier to get the references and the jokes and stuff having seen the original. So yeah, I definitely say see the first one and then see this, but it definitely gets a recommendation from me, the Disney fan.
Well, seeing as this is Monsters University, and thus we should probably grade it as such, I'd give it a B+.
B+, huh?
B+.
I give it an A-. Just to one-up you.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I legitimately give it an A-, because it does feel like an A-.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a good watch. It's, like I said, it's definitely better than Monsters Incorporated. Not by a whole lot, but, you know, like I said, I actually found myself enjoying it more than I enjoyed Monsters Incorporated. And there were some genuinely the feels moments. The feels.
Yes, this is one of those movies that tugs at your heartstrings.
Oh, yeah.
Like, now, not in the way that Toy Story Up does, but in the way that if you've ever been a college student trying to pursue your dream,
or if you've ever been that character,
right?
Yeah,
you will know how it feels.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it is kind of an interesting to see, that not only did they take it back to how Sully and Mike meet, but how Mike developed his, where Mike acquired his dream of being a scarer from. But like I said, in that respect, though, from that point to the Scare Games, it really felt like it could have been shorts. So I'm on the fence about this one, about whether it really needed to be a movie or not. But it was enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It was definitely enjoyable, which is why I give it the B+.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely fun. It definitely has its funny moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely creative in terms of its environments and its characters.
Mm-hmm. I am sort of disappointed that they didn't go more into the college humor. But in a way that actually makes it a stronger movie. That they knew when to, what to leave in and what to leave out.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so on behalf of Crazy Crew, unfortunately Eric couldn't join us again. He had similar illnesses, not scaly illnesses like me, but still, on behalf of us, we want to say we mostly approve. I say mostly because of you. We approve Monsters University and suggest you go see it. There will be a vlog later on to of course, go into spoilers and details, so keep an eye out for that.